Hell hath no fury like a Fernando Alonso scorned. Few drivers take issue with F1 rumour mongering quite like the two-time world champion, and he's made it crystal clear how unhappy he is with speculation he could make a sensational switch to Red Bull. Alonso's even promised to make sure there are consequences. Who for, and what exactly those consequences could be, we don't know. But whether it's putting some pressure on behind the scenes or simply freezing out any journalists or media outlets who have wronged him, Alonso sounds upset enough over this to follow through with his threat. We knew we were heading for some juicy Alonso reaction from the moment some cryptic tweeting from an established Spanish F1 journalist after the Mexican Grand Prix began to be interpreted as a hint that Alonso could leave Aston Martin after only one season to replace under-pressure Red Bull driver Sergio Perez. Other theories were this could be a straight seat swap with Perez going back to the team that binned him off in 2020, or that Alonso wasn't heading to Red Bull at all and instead could be on the brink of retiring again, following Aston Martin's slump in form through 2023. But it's the suggestion of a Red Bull move that seems to have really got under Alonso's skin, and we didn't have to wait long to find that out. At the Brazilian Grand Prix on Thursday, he made it clear he didn't take kindly to people stirring things up, and even went as far as claiming, "I will make sure that there are consequences." Given a Red Bull move should be right up Alonso's alley, you might think that he'd only react this badly to being linked with one if it was actually possible and he's annoyed it's been leaked. Otherwise, why would Alonso possibly have a problem with people starting to suggest he could or should be a Red Bull target? Well, although Alonso's very adept at using the media to his advantage, he really doesn't like it when he sees things that don't tally with his view. And people, especially pesky online journalists, piggybacking onto Alonso's reputation for attention, are just asking to be on Fernando's bad side. So if a Red Bull move isn't on the cards, which seems to be the reality, and we'll come to that later, we can see why he'd then take issue at people using his name to fan some flames and get some attention on social media or clicks on a website. That's why he was pretty brutal in slating this as paddock rumours from people who tried to make fun of it and gain some followers, implying Alonso didn't take either the originators or more likely the spreaders of this rumour that seriously at all. While everyone knows that the cryptic origin of all this is a tweet from Spanish journalist Albert Fabrega, it's very possible it's someone else that Alonso's ire could be aimed at. It appears Alonso has paid attention to what's been said or written, and by whom, through the week. Alonso was never named in the original tweet, but has inevitably been the subject of wild and persistent speculation on social media since, and he has been named in some articles that were published in response to it too. When stressing he wasn't enjoying the rumour mill going into overdrive, Alonso made a point of specifying it wasn't anybody in attendance at his written media session in the Interlagos paddock on Thursday. He said, "In this room, I appreciate that all of you are journalists, professional people that have been in Formula 1 for so many years. You gain your respect, and this is how it should be. All the rumours are coming from people that are not in this room. They are just here to make fun, and I think it's not funny when they play with anything." The intensity of this criticism and the broad target of it would suggest it goes beyond an established single Spanish media personality who goes to every race and speaks to Alonso quite regularly. So this is reacting to more than just social media buzz. It suggests Alonso's been ticked off by something he's seen in the media since it all started, and that he doesn't have a high opinion of where it's come from either. If Alonso's really annoyed about this because it's not true, why would anyone think it is, and why would anyone spread it around? The answer to the second part is murky at best. It could be as innocuous as a hypothetical suggestion or conversation, or as deliberate as someone wanting the idea of Alonso to Red Bull being out there, maybe to light a fire under Aston Martin, or to make it sound like Perez's days are numbered. Exactly what someone would gain from trying to steer the narrative, who knows? But it's a lot easier to narrow in on why Alonso to Red Bull captures people's imagination. Red Bull's second seat is a constant source of speculation, and Alonso is one of the best drivers in F1, whose current team is having a tough end to the season. Although this year has surpassed all realistic expectations for Alonso and Aston Martin in their first year together, it's finishing on a low ebb, having started with Alonso as Red Bull's primary challenger. There's little doubt that Alonso is still driving at an extremely high level, whereas Perez is under constant scrutiny at the back end of a tough season in which he's trailed off in the best car for the second year running. Alonso scored 7 podiums in total, which is only one fewer than Perez has managed in the same Red Bull that Max Verstappen has absolutely dominated the championship with. Perez is now limping to the finish line in second in the Drivers' Championship and caused his own retirement in his home race last weekend after turning into Charles Leclerc's Ferrari at the first corner. The potential need or desire for Red Bull to make a change stems from all of that. And were Alonso available or interested, then surely Red Bull would consider him because he's one of F1's greatest drivers. Red Bull has chased him before, remember, and Red Bull technical guru Adrian Newey has admitted that Alonso's one of the drivers he would have loved to have had the chance to work with in his career. Alonso's also famously adaptable as a driver and has a good relationship with Verstappen, so he would tick more boxes than most, although we'll get to the main one he doesn't tick shortly. Competitively, Alonso would be an upgrade for Red Bull, and clearly Red Bull would be an upgrade for Alonso. Though he has repeated a consistent message through 2023 that this has been a super season for Aston Martin, he admits that the team has not been as competitive as we wanted recently and that no one is happy with its current form. The trajectory the team has been on has been problematic for several months. Its strong start has faded into midfield obscurity. In the first 9 events, Aston Martin scored 175 points, but has added just 61 points to that tally in the 10 events since. Various upgrades haven't worked as expected, either by inducing negative car characteristics that make it harder to drive, or simply by not adding as much performance as hoped. That's led Aston Martin to be overhauled by Mercedes and Ferrari, as was largely expected early in the year, but also McLaren and even Alpine to a degree. That's right, Alpine, the team that Alonso fell out with and walked away from 12 months ago after it finished higher than Aston Martin's going to finish this year. Alonso's not a quitter, so it would be really surprising if he were to respond to all of this by giving up on the Aston project early and walking away from F1. You can see why a quick sideways move to Red Bull would appeal were it on the table, but it isn't. And Alonso is adamant that his faith in Aston Martin endures because he knows that this is a long-term project and insists anything achieved early in 2023 was just a big bonus. Though Red Bull has reiterated its intention for Perez to drive in 2024 as he is under contract, and this is believed to be the team's preference, it's also widely considered possible that Perez could be replaced at the end of the season after all. Alonso is under contract to Aston Martin for at least 2024, so would be an expensive and extremely surprising candidate were Red Bull to oust Perez. It always seemed like an absurdly unlikely prospect though, and regardless of Alonso's faith in Aston Martin or his contractual situation, Alonso doesn't seem to be on Red Bull's radar at all. There are 3 decent reasons that we can think of for that. One is Alonso's age, as he'd be a short-term option at best, and Red Bull's had too much instability in its second car since 2019. Second, Alonso's too good and too competitive for this to be a harmonious alliance for very long. While we reckon Verstappen would have the edge overall, Alonso is quick, adaptable and relentless. He would either cause problems on track, off track or both, and that's just asking for tension and trouble. Whenever Perez has been remotely competitive against Verstappen, it's sparked issues, and Alonso would be faster and more adept at F1's dark arts than Checo. Verstappen probably wouldn't fear going up against him, but Red Bull is almost certainly against the idea of having to manage them both. The third reason, and probably the most important one, is that Red Bull has other options that are just much more convenient, which is why keeping Perez or opening the door for Daniel Ricciardo are widely considered to be the 2 realistic options for 2024. Senior Red Bull figures Christian Horner and Helmut Marko keep repeating themselves that Perez has a contract, but the stated intention of keeping him leaves some wiggle room that's familiar in the context of recent driver decisions. There would be no intention of anything if Red Bull was completely set on what to do, as it would just be the reality. Ricciardo's a great example of how plans can change. He only became an AlphaTauri driver this year after reaching a mutual agreement to prematurely end his 2023 McLaren contract, which he and McLaren spent a lot of 2022 saying would be honoured. Red Bull has plenty of history in this regard itself. Either it moves a driver between its teams, or the driver gets axed and presumably just paid off. So Perez is just the latest to have a contract that is a clear indication of what should happen, but isn't actually a guarantee that it will. There is a lesson here from Perez's predecessors. Weeks before dropping Pierre Gasly, Red Bull said it had no intention of dropping Gasly. And when Albon was replaced by Perez at the end of 2020, it was preceded by Red Bull stressing how much it wanted things to work and that its intention was to retain Albon. Basically, Red Bull stands by its drivers until it doesn't. It doesn't make anything that gets said in support of Perez a lie, and you can give Red Bull the benefit of the doubt when Horner says that finishing second in the championship is not a condition for Perez to keep his drive in 2024. But it is a little naive to just take it all entirely at face value and to not read between the lines a little bit. So perhaps the best way to frame the situation is that Red Bull has signalled its intent but remains a little non-committal. Perez's place is not guaranteed, it's a target, a plan, but not a total assurance. It is possible Perez will be replaced, but if he is, it won't be by Alonso.